My name is Dane, and this is a Dane film. Today, we have... Wait, what? Yeah, a large reason I bought this roll was because it was a medium film format I'd never seen before. I know 120, and I even know 620, which can be its own video, but first, some boring but fairly interesting history. Apparently, 120 film isn't called 120 because it's 120 millimeters. It's called 120 because it was the 20th film Kodak produced in the line of films that started with 101. This is also why the official name of 35mm film is 135. But this has a 2 in front of it. So does that mean they made so many different film stocks they had to go from 100 to 200? No, it actually means it's the same size as 120, but double the exposures. Let me explain. Here's a typical roll of 120 film. If you unroll it, you'll notice it comes in 2 parts, the film and the backing paper. This backing paper is what you look at if you have a little window on your camera to see what number exposure you're on. We'll be back to this, will be important soon. 220 film forgoes the backing paper, and because it doesn't have the extra thickness from the paper, you could fit double the length of film. In the case of my 6x6 that normally takes 12 exposures, I now have the capability to take 24. This begs the question, if it's the same size as 120, can I use it in my 120 camera? Well, yes and no. You see, certain cameras have a setting for 120 or 220 for 2 key reasons. You'll notice that some cameras have this thing on the inside of the camera. This puts the film in an optimal point to match with focus. Now, because 220 film doesn't have the extra thickness of the backing paper, you would need to set that to 220 in order to match focus properly. My Ricohflex has a counting mechanism built into the advanced knob, and whenever I get to the next exposure, it locks, so I don't accidentally forward past a picture. The issue, in the case of 220 film, is that the counter only goes to 12 before it resets. But I also have the option to hold the counter at 0, which gives me free reign to wind the film unlocked. And because of the back window, I could just look at the backing paper to count my exposures. One main issue with using this film with a rear window like this is that you can't use the window, because the light that would come in would go straight onto the film, causing light leaks or fogs to your images, which would suggest that I can't even use this roll. But there is another method I could use to count my shots. That simply being, measure the rotation of the advanced knob for 1 exposure and keep count on a notepad. I shot a handful of 120 film this year, and have been using them as practice for this very roll. It's pretty simple. I take these 2 dots as my markers and start from exposure 1. Then I rotate it and see how far it has to travel until I see exposure 2. For my camera, I got it down to 1 full rotation and then a little bit extra. And it actually worked. I took these at box speeds because the seller and the person the seller got it from had both cold stored it for as long as they had it. Also, if you noticed, it's not just Portra, it's Portra NC, and from what I've learned, before the Portra we know today, there was NC, which stood for natural color, and VC, which stood for vibrant color. And yeah, the colors look pretty natural to me, a little colder than I'd prefer in some pictures, but those were during a fairly overcast day. You'll also notice some pictures are definitely softer than others I've taken, and yeah, that's the film's fault, not me. All in all, I really enjoyed using this film, and loved the results I got. Hopefully, companies start making 220 film again. Cinestill actually had a 220 option for their 400D campaign, but they didn't reach the goal for that. If only I got into film just a little bit sooner, and were also a tad bit richer.